Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello, happy Sunday, and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How's it going?
Good, pretty good.
All right.
Back for another Sunday evening discussion of Ashes of Creation and whatever else we come up with at the time. Still tons to talk about. There's just, I mean, I feel like we could go that node dump. We still haven't even got like halfway through, but then there's more stuff that just keeps coming and coming. So, tons and tons to talk about. But before we jump into Ashes, anything to talk about?
Other than I've been playing a little bit of Palia. They've got that limited seasonal event thing that they've got going on, which is their own season they made up. Which is kind of nice. That means they can have as many like rotating holiday events as they want on whatever schedule they please. And they're kind of like conducted in a separate way where it's not going to kind of do much to break normal gameplay to have it. So just so long as there's always one at a time in rotation, seems like it's pretty easy, like drag and drop deployment sort of thing. They don't need to touch them up too much between, like potentially one event and the next. So we'll see how it goes with these events, but that's a nice touch. They also added the second puzzle temple place thingy. It had a bit of a bug. For 2 days, people were dancing around this place where a little shiny stone was supposed to appear, but wasn't. And then they fixed it, and then everyone was happy. And they added spicy peppers, which I'm happy about because the game didn't have spicy peppers before, and they totally belong. You can make preserved spicy peppers, which, that's the sort of thing I do in real life too. What do you know? So that's nice. I'm glad to see the progress they've been making. It feels a lot more like they got everything mechanically where they wanted, and now they're just in like Contentsville. So if they've got what they've got and they're just going to keep putting more content in, it's probably not a bad place for them to be doing right now, especially since it sounds like they're planning to be releasing, I think it was in November on the Switch. So they got to probably ramp up the amount of content that's in there before they get there.
Haley is just...
I got to jump into Palia sometime too, and back into No Man's Sky. So the events thing, it's nice that we're seasons, and we have an expedition for No Man's Sky. So I'm hoping that it will be easier for seasons to be a thing, like a common thing for MMORPGs. And that means we might not need sieges in order to make the game dynamic enough to
it'll be dynamic even if everything's stagnant, for sure. Yeah, they've already said with the weather. Yeah.
Yeah, I had been thinking, 5 or 6, 7 years ago that we would really, with the addition of EverQuest Next, so I'll say 10 years ago, I was thinking, this is really going to be the savior to end game and feeling stuck, nothing to do, having to wait years for an expansion. Currently, the way to go seems to be these seasons. Even Diablo 4 has seasons, right? So it seems like that will be a viable answer, even if you aren't a lover of PvP.
And I should clarify for Palia, it's not like a season. It's a limited, like, I think 3-week long event.
Yeah.
And it's a thing. It's a short-term little thing that they stuck in, and it's fun, and you can get some extra goodies, and It's worthwhile for a player who enjoys the game and plays it to go back and hit it up like 4 or 5 times to do all the events there.
Yeah, I Palea's just, I don't know. I did a lot in alpha, and I feel like there's just nothing new to explore. I don't know. I don't have the vibe of just building furniture and putting it in the home. I don't know. That's become that's too cozy for me, I guess. So I've been still cruising along in No Man's Sky. I think I got like 100 hours in at this point. Still learning new stuff. One of the things I love, so of course they started expeditions. I would love to see, this is, I think, their version of season. This is kind of going back, Diggs, to what you're saying. How to integrate sort of new goals, not necessarily new content, but new goals and get cosmetics or something out of it. But their seasons are done very well, where you have a series of goals that you're trying to reach, and you can just kind of go on your own way. Like, oh, hey, here's a new system. I'm going to go explore this for a little bit. One thing I love in No Man's Sky, though, that I would love to see and done in Ashes, and then I know space versus high fantasy, blah, blah. But in No Man's Sky, they actually have all of these different star charts. So you can get something dropped somewhere, and it's basically a map to an item or a lore bit or something like that somewhere in a different planet, sometimes pretty far away. Would love to see little elements like that, because it gives you a reason to go explore in a where you might not otherwise. And so I don't know. I would love to see something like that brought into Ashes of Creation. Hey guys, I just found a map here. It says that there might be some sort of treasure. I don't know what over there, 3 nodes away. Let's go see what it says. But
Sounds like something Tax Day might be doing too. We might expect something like that to kind of push us to go out and explore more. Speaking of events, we had a new cosmetics package drop. I think it's the last one. And part of the lore there mentions Demon Tide, which happens every, I think it's Olitis 31st. And there were a couple of threads in the forums about, oh, this is going to be, obviously, this is the Halloween event. It's going to be coordinated with Halloween. And I was like, nuts. I did a little bit of sleuthing, and what the little birdies and whispers on the wind are telling me is that Margaret created that cosmetics lore. So it's really just lore. Don't expect to see Demon Tide in the game yet, necessarily. Like a lot of things, right? We read stuff on the cosmetics flavor text, and we're like, oh, that would be really cool to see that. I can't wait to see this in game. And it's like, yeah, that's necessarily planned for game. They did the same thing, I think, with the last package. There was something about funeral rites, and people were like, oh, are we going to have this? How are we going to have burials if we only have ashes? It's like, well, this is kind of flavor text. Don't expect to see burials of bones for players in the game. So
as we've talked about, my problem with how they market some of their things. But yeah, I saw that. I was even trying to figure out, like, how would you even integrate? Now, there's so much lore we just don't know. Obviously, we probably don't know 0.1% of it. But like, how would you integrate something like a Demon Tide into what we currently know? And I just couldn't. I mean, I guess if you called
the same way you put a Tetzel worm in and you call it a Celestial Elder Dragon instead of a fish-headed or a fish body cat-headed serpent from the Swiss Alps, which is what it really is. Sometimes things are a little whack, and that's fine. Like, that's why, focus on the items, not the lore.
Well, but I need some sort of reason. So I don't know where demons would come into play here. It reminded me a lot of sort of King Atrax and that sort of lictum process of becoming undead. If you've not seen the new item set, they actually look really, this is one of my more favorite set of cosmetics. So the mount that they have just looks crazy. Like I can't. It's gonna look. It's gonna be a lot of fun running across the world on that thing. I purchased them at this point. So, but we trying to remember how long. So January. This one will run until when is it? January. I had it pulled up and now I don't remember. Do you remember? January, is it 16th, 17th?
I'm not sure.
Like yeah, January 17th. So this one is actually going to go about, what is that, 4 months?
Yeah. And then we'll see what they do at that point. I gotta say, this is also like the Eye of Sauron sort of thing. It has a very good advantage of, oh, I'm going to go to the most peaceful, beautiful, serene highway node, in the coastal jungle, and I'm going to plop down this gore mansion. It's like, hey, everybody, I'm glad to have you, accept me in the town, and here's my gore mansion. Yeah, all right. And we're all going to meet here and do cool, like, culty stuff. Well, at least that's what it says on the marketing for it.
Yeah, imagine
we're all going to walk in robes and this, like, blood and viscera armor, but, like, don't let it fool you. We're still PvE, like, we'll just dance if you try to gank us. We're not actually edgelord, like, PKers or anything. We're just...
What I find is very interesting. Yeah, can you imagine some of the freeholds that we've seen already, the houses, and plop that in there, like coming over the ridge and there? Because then how do you change everything around it too? Not just necessarily within the node, but like, okay, I'm a farmer, so I've got corn over here and I got pigs, and then there's this weird ass looking house, and it's just gonna look weird. Like, so does the blacksmithing change? Like, does the processing station change to be more gory? Do your crops have blood on the ground? No, probably not, because that would be a ton of work. So it's weird how it's all going to piece together. And then going inside, like the furniture, the bed, the stuff that we've seen on the inside decoration, like how is that even going to look with something like this? It's just going to be weird. I don't know. It'll be extremely strange appearance wise, but looks cool. I
do like the striking sort of difference to it, that it's definitely something you'll see in the distance and be like, hey, that looks like some sort of weird enemy on the road. I wonder if we can kill it. And you get closer and you say, oh, God damn it, it's just some freaking warrior just wearing the blood and skeleton. Dude, you look like a zombie. What's your problem? The three of us were fitting to kill you. We still might.
Or even wearing that armor on some of the more cozy looking mounts. Like, it's just going to look weird.
On a fluffy unicorn. Yes, that'll be hilarious.
It's just going to all be so weird how this blends together.
With a flaming skull in tow.
Because they are so different. And it's just going to be kind of bizarre. But
that's why I kind of decided to stick to a theme more like naturey purples and greens and magentas and the lumen like in stovepipe and that sort of stuff. That's more my speed. It looks great.
I'm going to get the peddler costume and ride this mount around in it. It's just going to be so weird. So the Unseen Order, the big thing that came with that is, yes, this January 17th date is your final chance to purchase into Alpha 2. Steven has kind of backtracked a little bit, saying, well, we may open it up. It's sort of, they want to test their server framework first, get everybody in. I think what has been thrown out there is like 100,000 people at this point have access to Alpha 2. It's actually a quite large number. But I think they thought, well, if things fall off, we can always open it back up. And also the same for beta stages. They've talked about reopening it. 4 months, it's a full quarter. It's a pretty long time. I'm curious as to why they came to 4 months. We'll never really find out. Of course, everybody's saying, "Oh, that's when Alpha 2 is going to start."
No, that's not when Alpha 2 is going to start. What I would be taking a better guess on is that's going to be closer to the time when everybody will have returned from their holiday vacations and have everything all back and ramped up and ready to go. So that way they have like another week or so before they actually deploy the switch over to the next one they'll already have made, if they're going to do another one. Or if they decide they're not going to, and the one that they've got as a backup, which again, I'm sure they've probably got plenty in backup that they could do. They just don't do it. And it's like, all right, no, that's it. Nothing to buy for a little bit. Maybe think about getting like a hoodie or something. Do they have physical merch yet?
No, they did before. I have a shirt.
Well, maybe they will switch to physical merch. I would love to get physical merch.
I still have that shirt. I'll wear it. I'll wear it out. I have 2 other shirts too, but they're not. They're by other people.
Aren't you wearing that shirt right now?
No, this is one that's not. This was not their store.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I assume January 17th. Yeah, there's the holiday but that also I think gives them time to get people to return items that they didn't actually want that they got for Christmas, get some extra money, and still purchase their Alpha 2 key. I assume that's part of why that goes to there. But yeah, these whole comments, I think this has been some forum chatter too. Like, oh, Alpha 2. It's like, well, Steven just said, so when did we start doing 5.2 Unreal? That was a while back, right? Because they just released 5.3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was from the end of 2021 to like the first quarter or so of 2022, something like that.
Well, 5.2? No, I thought that was the switch to 5.
Yeah. Because my point here is he actually just made a comment in Discord that they just now finished not too long ago the 5.2 update, which has been many months, and that they're not going to start the 5.3. They are going to do it, but they're not going to start it till the end of the year. So it's like, yeah, I guess they could put us in while they're doing this update, but I doubt they would do that. Seems like that would be a big headache. I still think someone should go through, and maybe I can do this if I ever have free time, go through the last sort of 6 interviews / live streams and count up how many times he said, oh, we're going to do that. We got to do a showcase. We got to do a showcase, so that we get a rough estimate of how many things he thinks they still need to show prior to Alpha 2. But yeah, we have a final date is set. So
for Alpha 2 packages.
Yep. You can still upgrade Kickstarter and summer packages. Those will not be stopped. I am still curious, and this is probably something I'll ask at the next live stream, why it says we may open cosmetic sales again in the future. What does that mean? Are they stopping with them for now? It's curiosity.
Yep, I think it might just be boilerplate legalese that was approved so they could put something up where they weren't committed to anything.
So anything that you all been wanting to chat about? I mean, I got a list of stuff here, but
let's just go through the list.
Well,
yeah, I think, well, you had said about mayorship, but yeah, let's just go through the list. We'll get to it when we get to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one thing that we did not really talk about was sort of the mayor part of the node stream, and sort of they chatted a little bit about some of it. So the scientific election of a mayor would be a ranked choice, popular choice vote, which apparently Stephen also wants for real life elections. I think he had kind of made a comment on that.
One thing there is that the scientific nodes are now being interchanged with the label of academic nodes. So that might have a full change at some point, but Stephen has kind of started going back and forth saying academic and scientific. So,
okay, that's a funny thing. That's a funny thing that comes up in D&D is like in a low or high fantasy setting, the question, does the word science actually exist? Like there's alchemy and engineering and this and stuff, but if I use the word science or scientist in this high fantasy setting, would everyone know what I mean? Or is it just like, what is this ski and say thing that you wrote down here? Like that. That's kind of what I think of, is I'm not sure if there's anything necessarily that they're saying against the use of the word science so much as academics a little more fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So that
it's a little bit more medieval, you mean?
Yeah.
Same thing with tank.
Medieval / Western fantasy, yeah.
We use medieval for non-Western cultures.
Well, other cultures have. I'm not a history major, so I'm not going to get into anything. That one's a forum subject that can go like 12 pages, so I'm going to just back off of that one.
Semantics. Ooh.
That's not what we're here for. I mean, you might be here for this one, but
I'm just saying we're not going to have a semantics talk. Okay.
We might, but not about that.
That is interesting. Like, why would they change the name?
I don't know.
I assume the function won't change.
Yeah, it's been 6 years. Who knows? So there's that. And what was the other thing I was thinking about?
Well, we know they changed it because science was originally just like, a for science meme was going around the office at that time, and that's why they chose it. That just as easily could be the reason why they picked it then and are changing it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I like the whole thing. It's certainly science. So when I think of scientific or academic, that process is through exploration of fact and, scientific process and what is true, what is not true. And so to have a ranked choice popular vote way to elect a mayor for a scientific node doesn't really make sense, because that's not how science works. It's not who's the coolest. It's who's done the best, who knows the most, done the best research. It is not who's the coolest person in the room. So it's kind of weird in that sense. But that is where everyone, I think, assumes streamers and that sort of stuff will become sort of the popular mayors. Yeah, political science. Even there. Agal would mention in chat political science. I mean, that's just not how science works, but, it's fine. They had to have a method of voting. And this also seems to
might change with feedback.
Yeah, this also seems to be the only, they kept saying during the stream, like, well, you can vote the mayor out. You can vote the mayor out. Well, this is the only one. We've not gone through the others, but this is really the only one that allows you to vote someone out.
Oh, no, that's not true. The combat trial one that they've changed for military, it's just a different sort of polling process. You gather your 80 people and all of your best gear and consumables against the competitors' 15 and all of their best stuff. And it's like, all right, well, we're going to see who's the mayor now. It's that you're voting with your sword instead of a piece of paper.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not a 1-for-1 election in terms of how much each person voting contributes to the election. Sure, there's a bit of a skill-based distribution there, but ultimately it means if you've got like a bunch of people, like we'll often see with like maybe a 2 or 3%, a little bit here and there. And then you've got two candidates more with like 25 to 30%. It's going to be among those ones for who's going to battle it out. All the little ones are just going to get crushed.
But you could still have people, a group that no one likes, that are just good at PvP, and you're not going to be able to vote them out.
No, you're going to have to raid them out.
But that's my point. Like there's really only one place where you could actually vote, because there's only one that actually even has a vote. Divine is a favor competition, PvE favors. So I assume that's
PvE engagement.
Yeah, so some sort of questing, completing tasks, whoever sort of gains the most favor. So again, not a way to vote someone out. You can't, I assume you can't transfer favor. So it's got to be an individual's effort. So I could be the biggest asshole in the world. And if I have 20 hours of a day to go play Ashes of Creation and do divine node stuff, then I get to be the mayor.
Yeah, I mean, you circumcise 1,000 squirrels and, that's it. You're the dude.
And then economic, which is a blind bid auction, which is also very interesting that it's a blind bid. I'm curious to see how that ended up being. Like, do people go excessively high? Do they lowball? I'm really curious to see. What I hope is after the auction is completed, we actually get to see bids. That would be interesting. But I don't think we'll get to do that. But I would be super curious to see like what people are throwing out. Now, of course, it's blind during. It would make sense to leave it blind after, so that nobody can really game the system. But it's another one. Can't really vote out. That one I assume will be guilds, the big power guilds that have very large economic backgrounds and nodes and freeholds that are picking a guild leader or someone like that to sort of be the leader. So out of those, what do y'all think as far as we get to the 5 metropolises? What is most likely to grow? Like, where do you think the general population will lie?
Depends on the server.
Yeah, it depends on the server, but actually academic, because everyone likes fast transport.
I think a lot of people don't. So I'm expecting to see servers where those get destroyed. Like, make sure there's no scientific nodes, no scientific metros.
If you have the ability to set up so you can instant caravan anywhere across a place, that's a great place to set up. You can do whatever you need to there. You can get your stuff around super quick. So I think people are going to want that.
You cannot instant caravan even with fast travel superpower. But
I don't know. Maybe you won't even need the caravan. You don't have to package up your stuff like that because it's small enough loads that you can just grab it and take it. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that will not be a thing. You're not going to bypass risk versus reward like that, but we'll see.
Well, instead of creating a parcel further away and then carting it in, you just bring your resources and then you fulfill the order there. And you don't get the distance multiplier or whatever.
But that would also be a reason why people on the server would not want there to be a scientific or academic node.
Well, if everybody's living there, then no one's going to try to knock it over.
Depends on the server. That's what I said, right?
Yep, it does. Everything's really going to depend on a lot of things. For all we know, all of them are going to be built in the underground because everybody just goes so big for Tolnar that, of course, we're not going to build a surface metropolis. Why would we even bother? That'll be an interesting server. I'd love to see the, nope, we're leaving the surface all, to all the surface folk. We're going to just dominate the underground.
How much thought do you think will go into this at the beginning. Like as people are starting on a fresh start server, I mean, you'll have guilds that are existent currently and people that'll probably get out a piece of paper. All right, this is what we want here, there. Especially as we go through alpha, beta, and kind of seeing where the nodes are selected and which nodes are going to be of which type and positioned, versus how much of this is, all of a sudden you have 10,000 people on the server and they're just doing stuff. They're just like going here and there, not really. And all of a sudden you have a level 3 here and a level 3 there. I'm curious how much thought initially goes into some of these server growths.
I kind of think of it like maybe like bacterial or fungal colonies on a petri dish or like a piece of fruit or something, that there are areas where it will differentially be more effective and build up more, and areas where it won't be as effective and not get to work in nearly as quickly. And I feel like it's going to be the same sort of thing. You start with something fresh, and then you take a little while, and it'll start to get to a point where it's pretty goopy and things will start settling. But then I guess you basically just keep on adding more and more media to it, and over time it can kind of shift and change in different sorts of ways, or like taking a bunch of like different I don't know, like sands with like little different colored magnetic particles or whatever, and swirling them around, and the different concentrations and stuff. That's sort of, it's going to be a mix. It's going to be a mix. There's going to be some amount of things where there's going to be densities and sparse areas. Those are going to shift and change over time. Various events will occur to facilitate that. And there will generally be kind of an equilibrium of how much activity and how much stuff is shifting, relative to, I guess, whatever would be peak nodes, like whatever the highest all of the nodes can possibly be across the world, and whatever that like sum of total tiers is. I don't think it's always going to be that number all the time. I would imagine it's going to probably be about, as the game starts, obviously it's going to be at 0 and it's going to build up for a while. But then once it gets towards the top, it's, 100% is going to be an asymptote. It's going to be floating around like 90%, maybe 80 to 90%, depending on how volatile the server is, for how high all the nodes are across the world relative to what peak node could potentially be. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not that there's an exact limit, that there could be ways that things are configured differently, that peak number could be, different on its own, but just that I imagine there will be room to grow and room to progress. Things will get kicked down, things will upgrade. They'll constantly be shifting and changing. It will never just become stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
Or perhaps if it does become stagnant, maybe that's what makes the corruption grow, and then the server gets kicked over.
So I'm curious, again, with the mayorship stuff, like which ones will take the most effort to be mayor? The voting one seems like you could just vote anybody. Like again, whether those become streamer nodes, but the military one in specific, because Neuro, you had started to come talk about this. The way it was presented, Steven said it was a week long, a series of timed events that were all PvP with objectives. And yes, you would have people would throw their lot in with you, so they could have your friends PvP with you. And obviously, if you have more friends than the other person, then you're probably going to win.
Or they're more active.
Yeah, but you score points. So everyone would get points based off the objectives that are completed. And at the end of the week, the highest points wins. That seems like a lot of work to continuously keep your mayoralship up. A week.
Did they say an IRL week or a game week?
It would have to be an IRL week.
Yeah. I was going to say they did not, but I can't imagine it would be an in-game.
Have they actually, I may have missed it. Did they say how long an actual term of mayorship is?
A month.
A month. An actual IRL month.
I think so.
I would assume 4 weeks.
Because that was the thing I was a little confused with. I remember in Alpha, I believe in Alpha 1, they were referring to it as a week, but it was a week consolidated into 24 IRL hours. So the mayorship was flipping over every day. It was just a simple vote among, the citizens.
Yeah, that's for testing. Alpha 1, yeah.
Yeah. Now, but that was the thing that threw me off, is that they called that a week, but it was being processed in a day. And I wasn't sure if they meant, when they say a week and a month, do they mean IRL or do they mean in game for that? Because those are two completely different timescales.
Again, if you're going to be testing for a couple of months, then you can't have a mayor be a mayor for a month.
Right.
So, and that's preliminary testing for vote, how the vote's going to work. So they're going to want that to turn over quickly during especially Alpha 1 test.
I wonder how much they're going to have wipes in Alpha 2, and they're going to have just specific, all right, everybody's a level 30, and there's a bunch of level tier 2 and 3 nodes out there. You're just going to, you start your character and find one and, do the thing.
Yeah, and what did they say? They're starting Alpha 2. I think you can only get up to the town. I think you can only get up to stage 4.
It was either town or city, but initially...
No, it's not city.
Yeah, I guess it was initially town.
Add it later.
And then, those are going to come later on. So that'll be... that does bring up an interesting point about the release of Alpha, because you're right. They wouldn't want to be doing the transition to Unreal 5.3 while they've got players in. That seems like a lot to have to manage. So if they're going to do that at the end of the year, we might be looking at April or May or so potentially for when they're even finished with that transition process.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
So hopefully it brings some features and tools and stuff that they truly need. So that way, whatever it is that they're getting out of it, they'll be getting out of it.
Right.
Who knows after that? It sounded like he was pretty stoked on 5.3, but it was more like wait and see after that. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear they will upgrade as much as they feel they need to upgrade. So,
Bellwood has one for us here. A2 will contain city nodes at the start, though assets used in the beginning may still be town assets.
Yeah. That's what he had said in Discord.
So that makes sense. Okay. Cities looking like towns.
Towns, And, a lot of the upgrades to Unreal Engine is when Steven was acting as the lead game designer. So it'll be interesting to see what Bill Trust will have to say in terms of, okay, we're going to keep upgrading, and how feasible, because at some point you're going to have to say, is the game going to release ever? You can... Unreal Engine is not going to stop doing updates based on when Ashes of Creation is planning to release. So we can expect them always to be adding something 5.5, 5.6, and oh my God, that's all awesome. We should definitely add that to you. You can do that forever.
Yeah, I will say it does sound as though they're not just like these 5.1, 2, and 3 all added significant improvements, it sounds like, for them. I'm sure there'll be more later
And you
on.
can expect 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 to also have some pretty significant stuff that people are going to want to add.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree.
We'll just have to see what migration looks like.
Yes, I'm curious to see some of these others. You know, Throne and Liberty is Unreal 4. Like, are they secretly working on an upgrade branch somewhere? Maybe.
They don't have to. Unreal 4 is going to be lower performance requirement threshold, so it'll still be able to cater to lower power systems than Unreal 5. For projects that are trying to do more like that, that are trying to cater to the current users and hardware, yeah, it totally makes sense to stick with 4. 4 is a gorgeous engine already. If you've already got it all set up the way you need, there don't need to jump ship. You've got a project that's going to be making you money, already is. So that's the one that's already overseas and is being localized out here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's already a game that's making money.
For which game? Sorry, I was zoned out there.
Throne and Liberty?
Oh, no, it's not released anywhere at this point.
Oh, I thought it was already released.
No, they did a test out in South Korea, and that's what blew up on social media, that the combat looked horrible because you couldn't move. As long as you just kept running, no one could hit you. It was awful. So they've apparently redone all of that. And Amazon, of course, is publishing. So they have a technical test coming up this week, actually, that runs for what?
Publishing in South Korea?
Right? I mean, that's where NCSoft. Am I wrong in this? Like Lineage?
I don't know. I was assuming that the publisher that Amazon as a publisher was for the U.S., but
no,
not South Korea. But I'm not sure.
It is, but there's still.
Right. I'm saying, as opposed to being that was it was the Western publisher, but not the South Korea publisher. But I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't either, but it's not released anywhere. It's not in a playable state anywhere. The feedback on it was horrible, so they've kind of gone back, and that's, I think, part of what this technical test. I'm pretty sure Amazon told them, this game is dead on arrival if you continue with whatever it was that they saw. So, but yes, it looks wonderful in Unreal 4 and does not necessarily need to upgrade.
That's good then.
Last thing I want to say about mayors that came out of this was, which was positive. There's a question: what happens if your mayor just decides to quit? Hey, I'm not doing this anymore. They are taking that into account, and the game will actually make the more important decisions will be made automatically if there's not someone doing it themselves. So there is a backup to that. I'm a little surprised that you can't just vote someone out, just if they leave, it sounds like you just have to wait until the next cycle. There's no process of removing so it sounds very time based. There can't be sort of start and stops to this system. It sounds like it's all has to roll over at the same time every time. So
that's the other reason why it felt a little odd to me to be an IRL month, not an in-game month. Just because that is a very long turnover for your young plucky guild leader to get grounded for having bad grades or getting in a fight or something, and then, oh no, our mayor is gone for the next 28 days. Crap, we're stuck. That's not something I think anybody wants. I don't think Steven would be happy if that happened. If that happened to him, I think he would go in and say, hey, engineering team, what can we do about this? And be like, dude, this wasn't in the design, but we can kick it out and put you as the mayor just because you can cheat. I don't think he would actually do that. I would hope not. I would hope that we come to a better solution so nobody gets asked out when their mayor disappears.
Well, again, they're trying to account for all of this, so that's where policies requires votes, and you must have, it sounds like, simple majority in order for policies to be enacted. And so you do have a mechanism to where if you just have a complete dickhead trying to just ruin a node, you do have some mechanism on which you can try to fight back to that. This is actually where I'm really curious about gaming the system, since there's not a hard cap on citizenship and we have ends now, which seems to be open to everyone, where if you just didn't like someone, could you bring in a whole lot of people from somewhere? Again, I'm thinking of like these really weird guilds and how we could form a large guild that just does kind of fucked up stuff. And one of them could be, I already talked about the destruction of people's ecology in the land management system, which seems entirely possible. Another is a guild for hire that if you're tired of your mayor, they all become citizens and they just downvote, they just vote against every policy and just try to get the person to get out of mayorship. Seems like another way to potentially game that.
Got to have a lot of alts because there's a month cooldown between being able to do that. When you manually leave citizenship and you are not cast as a refugee because your place got knocked over, there is going to be a significant cooldown as a penalty against people just being able to up and leave and do that. So for that specific reason, they have a system in place to make that difficult. That said, there's no story about one citizenship per account per server or not. I'm not 100% certain on that. Did they say anything?
No.
Because otherwise you could spin up as many alts as the server allows and kind of circumvent the system that way. And it's not going to be an instant leveling process. You're going to have to put effort into getting them all up. I'm sure. I get it.
I think that there's a restriction at least per server for citizenship on your alts per account.
We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Maybe the idea is to tank the place before it's going to be attacked.
Yeah, I mean,
and so you're basically there to downvote all of the siege stuff and make them burn all of their mandates to try to override you.
Yeah, yeah, and we've not been told, because it can go into disrepair buildings, right? We don't know what that means really yet. We've kind of seen it, but
no, they said what disrepair is. Disrepair is that it can't be used again until either the mayor pays to have it restored, or players take the materials and restore it themselves because they've had enough of the mayor's crap.
Mm-hmm. So yes, could that then weaken it for a siege is another question. And as you mentioned, these policies, if voted down, the mayor can still override them with mandates. Now,
actually, that's one thing I'm not sure about, because the order of operations there was a little confusing. It sounded to me, though, like it's instead, if you don't think you're going to get the votes on something, you just do a mandate that does it without requiring a vote. But if you take it to a vote and they vote no, you can't immediately play your mandate and veto that. I could be mistaken. I'm not 100% sure from the way they described it if you can do that at any time, or if it's a issue a mandate or issue a vote for a policy, and it's, they're mutually exclusive sort of things.
Yeah, that's a good question. Don't know.
Because there are cooldowns on things. So if you try something and it gets voted down, it sounds like it'll be on cooldown before you can attempt that action again. So you wouldn't just be able to force it through immediately.
They did say some policy cards, because they talked about it as like a card system almost, that they do have cooldowns. And these are things like policies would be taxes, buffs that can be provided by the node. They said node rep, which was a mix of war and trade. which I find very interesting, that mandates are generated by declaring war. So that's sort of an active reason to war with your neighboring nodes beyond just, somebody pissed me off. Like, it actually generates the mandates that you, and I would imagine that not everything will generate mandates in the same amount. I don't know, and I would assume that declaring war, what was interesting is it's declaring war. It's not necessarily like becoming successful and declare, like there wasn't a success tied to it that we know of. It was just declaring war to generate those mandates so you can build the buildings. It's a very interesting. I would assume you could get more mandates out of declaring war than say something else.
The other flip side of that, though, is when you've declared war or you're in a defense state, what options will be available, what cards you can actually play are going to change to reflect the nature of what's going on. So you might have a ton of mandates, but you're not going to use them to build, a nursery and like a monastery or anything like that. No, you're going to be building war machines with that. You're going to be building, those meat racks, those things where it's the things with the meats on the skewers that you could see in the crafting interface. Those were listed as a war item, I believe. So, yeah, you're going to be making trebuchets and meat racks. You're not going to be making, rainbow lily fountains in the center of town.
Mm-hmm. They did say different events trigger different policies that are available. So certainly if a node siege is occurring, that opens up different policies. I think he had mentioned like you can force people to do certain, NPCs to do stuff, and you can kind of rush votes through. And it said it requires less to pass. So I don't know what that means, less votes, because it's already just a simple majority. So what does less to pass mean? Is it like 25%? Is it just purely I'm the dictator and I get to do what I want? I don't know what that means. But some other interesting
votes is not just a yeses and nos, but total population that actually voted versus total population period. Like if you only had 5% of the population vote, maybe that doesn't count as passing the vote because you needed at least 30, but in wartime you can pass with like 15. So it could be more on the minimum participants threshold side of things.
Well, and am I wrong here? Or it seems like we often use node war and node siege interchangeably, but those are two different things, correct?
They are, yes.
You can be at war with another node and never have an intent to siege, never actually activate a siege.
That's right.
Because then what's the point? Like, what are the benefits to war? Remind me. Do you know, Diggs? Like, what do you get by declaring war? Because you can already go kill whoever.
There's just different
openly auto flag, right? To you.
Yeah, that's one. But there's different objectives. So probably more about trade than destruction. By the way, citizenship is one node per account. So all your alts would be citizens of the same node. Gotcha. They cannot be a citizen of a different node. But you could have a whole bunch of citizens in.
Is that per server? Because you couldn't do that per account. Yeah, but if you're on a different server, there's different nodes. Like you wouldn't be the same. Like it's literally a different node system. Like you couldn't be a citizen of a node that doesn't exist.
No, I don't think you would be able to be a citizen of a node on a different server. I don't think so. I think it's account wide.
Because it's freehold that's account.
There are restrictions of freeholds and housing, per server and per account.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Interesting. So, but other policies can be unlocked by other conditions as well. So things like the dominant race of the node will change building choices, locations. NPC happiness will change what you have access to in policies. So being a mayor is going to be very time consuming. I don't want any part of it. I don't think I could do it. Like, how many hours a day it would take to be a mayor? Like, not even to just get elected. Because, you know, you're the divine. You've done all of these quests, and you've turned in 20 quests a day for 3 weeks, and you finally have the favor. You're the mayor, but you got to do the same shit to keep up. Like you got to keep doing what you can't stop, because then you won't be mayor in 4 weeks. But at the same time, you got to do all these things. It's like, wow, this is a huge time investment. Like, when it comes to management of the nodes, I feel like the best positioned would be the academic people, because they don't really have to do anything other than just be popular. Like, they don't have to spend their time doing other things. They don't have to farm maps to PvP.
Maybe you've got to gather some amount for all of them. Some amount of what's it called? The currency, node currency, before you can actually bid that on starting the mayorship. So part of it is people aren't just going to do it willy-nilly. It's something that you want to do with intent, because you had to build up that stuff. That ain't, you know, it doesn't just drop on trees or drop from trees. You gotta put in a lot of effort and questing and all of that just to even run to begin with. You might not get it back afterward. It might be considered your campaigning fees or something. So I think that might be one of the things that kind of helps, is that maybe it just won't be a super frivolous sort of thing, that it will, and as the tier escalates, I would imagine, increases further, that, you know, oh yeah, you want to be the mayor of this divine metropolis. Well, it starts with, you know, all this, you know, expensive resource, like any place. And then, yeah, you're going to be logging on during prime time, doing dailies for the next 3 weeks to campaign.
Like, who's running the node? The military, like, who's running it when the military person's spending a week of their one of their 4 weeks is in PvPing, just so they can stay in the mayorship?
Let's keep in mind that there are other government positions besides just the mayor who can have an effect on that. So you'll probably have a bishop, or what is Pope, or something like that. You've also got the lead economic person. There's other social orgs. All the social orgs will have representatives and government positions, so it won't just be the mayor.
Which makes me curious if they're going to have all of these different, you know, a council, whatever, a city council, somebody, all these other positions. Like, is there a way for them to get rid of a mayor or interfere with a mayor?
Yeah, are they elected or appointed?
Appointed, it sounds like.
No, it's all, again, by who's doing the most in that social org, or the religion in the area, and all that stuff.
So are you saying the number 2 person in divine favor does not get to be the mayor, but they get to be the deputy mayor? Like, they get a consolation prize.
Mayor, but it's not deputy mayor, but it's they have their own stuff that they're doing in government.
But I think the question was, how do they get that role? So is it like the second place in the military competition gets to pay a role, or does the person who wins get to pick?
No, in the military node, you'll still have religious people doing things, and so you'll have a pope who belongs to that node. You'll have a or that might be, or acolyte. You'll have
you have social orgs, but they wouldn't be a part of the ruling group. Like, I think there's a committee that's appointed by the mayor, right?
No, those leaders all have government positions, and they're not appointed. They're based on you being at the top of whatever that progression is in that social org.
I will have to do reading on that. Well, we are at 9:00. What else you want to go over? I got a few extra minutes.
The next thing that's coming up is world events. That's going to be our next topic for the dev stream, the end of September, which is kind of creeping up on us super quickly. And I was just looking up rallying calls from EverQuest Next. I'm wondering if that's going to be something similar. We already saw one demo of the events system. That was with the goblins, I think, coming across and causing some mischief. So I'm wondering how world event is different from that events system demo that we saw. And I'm not sure, but should be interesting to see.
I had wrote this down somewhere. I mean, it's a defined thing. What the world event actually is. Here. Pop-up challenges adapt to player strength. They last 20 to 30 minutes. The one we're going to get shown is a wave event. So waves of mobs. I don't know. I'm not super excited by this. I don't see anything new, revolutionary. I mean, this kind of stuff happened. I mean, Warhammer Online had world events way back when. They were actually run very well. But, more often called public quests. World of Warcraft has them. So I don't know. I mean, it's good to have. It gives players other stuff to do. I mean, like we don't want to run out of stuff to do. And these spawning every 20, 30 minutes in different locations, but it doesn't necessarily sound like they have long-lasting changes to the world versus, like a storyline that you go through. It's just
is
repeat.
This the same thing that they have in World of Warcraft, where you have several per day? You can have. Yeah, I think they even happen every couple of hours in World of Warcraft. They repeat every couple of hours, the same ones.
WoW's was just a repackage of dailies. I hope that's not what this is, but because in World of Warcraft, the world events, you're right, they repeat every so. I mean, so they're just basically dailies again, and you could only do so many in a day, the same as dailies. So hopefully that's not the case here, but I don't know. Maybe we'll see something that's really cool. I don't know, but a wave event somewhere out in the Riverlands. I don't know. That it'll be fun the first time, maybe the second time, 10th time, not so sure. So
I had an interview with Lattice yesterday, which should be showing up on his podcast, I guess, in the next couple of weeks. And what was he was wondering about how that would relate to Monster Coin events, which we haven't heard anything about in the last couple of years, it feels like. When was the last time Steven talked about Monster Coin events?
He briefly mentioned Monster Coin here recently.
Yeah,
he didn't go to any in-depth
ways
on
you can. He said that was one of the ways you could work with your mayorship to specifically knock over a structure that you wanted to get rid of instead of going through the full demolition process. It's like, hey, I'm a citizen. I have this coin here. And it's like, oh, great. Well, that old barn over there, we don't need anymore. We actually need, all of our food stuff's taken care of. So we need to turn that into the, smithy forge upgrade side tier structure. So if you want to turn into a T-Rex, we'll let you chomp that thing to bits, and then we can fight. But we need you to destroy that. All right. Hey, wait a minute. That's your competitor's store. Oh yeah, I'm gonna destroy that too. Sorry. Right? I'm a T-Rex. What do you want?
Yeah, but the coin allows you to become a monster, but what's triggering the monster coin event itself? What's triggering the event? That's
you use the coin. You walk up and press the coin.
I don't think so. I think the coin allows you to play as a monster. I don't think it triggers the event.
I got the feeling that you have coin, use coin, make monster, go do the thing.
I think there will probably be a world event type thing where you have defined periods of time in which you can Wow, is anybody else seeing that with Neuro? Is
What?
that just me?
Oh,
Do you see that, Diggs? Am I freaking out?
wow.
What's going on?
That's weird. I don't know what's going on in your OBS because that's not happening on my Discord. Hold on.
Are you seeing that, Diggs? Wow. That was
Did that
weird.
fix it?
Yeah.
That's better.
It's like, damn, the Matrix is catching us up, man.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think, yeah.
When you're getting old, when the Matrix catches up with when the Matrix catches up with you.
Galwood said you can't attack your own node with Monster Coin. I'm pretty sure though he was commenting on. So I don't know if that's changed, but that was in the context.
Monster Coins might have changed a lot.
Yeah, because he mentioned
maybe they'll
Monster
talk
Coin
about that
specifically during the node stream. I'll have to go back and reread it or re-listen. He did also provide some clarification. We talked about warehouses, I think, last week, and the fact that you can access your warehouse anywhere. I think we talked about that, didn't we? I don't remember.
Yeah. Completed items and giving an advantage to end item crafters.
Yeah.
Something I've been complaining about and pointing out the entire time. And, you know, the design has become even more solidified on that problem.
Yeah. You know, as you mentioned, like with the gatherers and processors really being at such a disadvantage. So he did clarify again that completed items and consumables will be accessible at any warehouse. So it sounds like those are not subject at all to sieges in any way. Because he also then said processed materials and raw gatherables that are stored within a warehouse are subject to the location of the node where the deposit was made. So for those, if you deposit it in node A and node A comes under siege, like you're at risk of losing all of those materials that are stored there, versus if you had deposited all your longswords there too. It sounds like the fact that a siege happens there does not cost you you will not lose any sort of processed goods. So there seems like there's this
completed goods.
Yeah, completed. So it's like there's
almost whatever you've got there, complete as many items out of it as you can, stash them and get the hell out of there if that's what your plan is. I would imagine part of it is that they intend for people to use their resources in the different purchase orders. So that way, in exchange for losing their resources, because the place is at risk of getting kicked over, they can contribute some resources to the war effort, and they get a bit of node currency that they'll be able to spend another time in another place. Or there afterwards if they succeed.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting too, because there was another question asked, and he mentioned that because there was a question about access to the materials during a siege, and if you need them, because everything gets locked down. And he did clarify that, well, no, through defense projects, so I assume policies, you can select. A mayor could enact a policy, or I assume it's a policy, to allow you to have access to materials. So you actually can, but it depends on what strategy the node decides to take. But this whole scenario, though, I don't know why you would even keep processed good or raw goods around. Like there's the incentive here is to just make shit. Just make it like you because you can't lose it.
I go back again to Star Wars Galaxies. If you gather the very best of all the very best materials for all the specificities, the best leather for your hilts, the best metal for your hilts, the best, this and that for your steel and the runes to put on your steel. You've got all of the best recipes and materials and everything. And then siege happens. It's like, well, great. All that damn work I put in getting the absolute best of everything so I could custom tailor top-notch weapons. Well, I guess I better start crafting some damn legendary weapons. I hope there's some deep pockets here because, if I can't take my stuff out. And that honestly seems like a really, really punishing sort of policy that you lock down all of a crafter's materials in an area by declaring siege. I would imagine it might be the lead up to siege, things aren't fully locked down, but when the siege begins, they become locked down. So that way, the lead up where there's that bit of prep time, you do have a chance to grab your stuff and get out of there if that's more your speed.
Gatherers and processors are going to have a hard life, man.
Yeah, they are. That's
No,
a
they won't. They
problem.
just won't be playing. They just won't be playing. That's okay. I just noticed that we're about 20 posts away from reaching page 200 on the DPS meter thread that we have going on the forums. So we should be hitting page 200 for that on in a couple days.
I mean, is
the only posts that usually go that long are the ones where somebody puts the title, the last person to post on this wins, and then someone keeps on replying saying, I won, no, I won, no, I won. And it goes on for a while. You know, that's like some 90s stuff.
No, it's all pretty legit so far.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, the next 10... I think because we're 10 posts away. I think we're at 20, so I think we're 10 posts away from hitting page 200. So the next 10 might be something like that. But
I've developed an idea and a theory that people that are so intent that they have to have add-ons actually just can't play the game. They are not actually good. If you take away these tools that prop them up, would be lost. Just lost. I think that should be the next World of Warcraft. Once hardcore gets kind of stale and people get tired of it, the next version of WoW should be you cannot use add-ons. This is an add-on free world, and let's then see who actually is good at clearing the bosses and who does the server first and how long it takes. I think DPS meters are just for people who are unable to actually talk nicely to others. And so rather than trying to have a conversation and say, hey, we've noticed you're having a hard time. How can we help you? It's just an easier process of saying your numbers suck. Get the hell out of here. You're off the team.
Yeah, it's that most efficient tactics available. They just want to speed run through that part of the game as efficiently as possible. Some people like that.
Yeah, I hopefully Ashes is done in a way that it really doesn't it doesn't really matter too much what the DPS is because things change and
Yep.
I can't understand that mindset though because I've had these conversations. It's like, well, why? There's an easy way to tell whether or not your raid team is doing okay. Did you succeed or not? Did you kill the boss or not? And I will say that, like, that's your measurement of success. And they're like, no, it depends on how fast we do it. I want to be the fastest at doing it.
And there's some kind of competition for being the top end raider or the only one to be able to complete it. So it's like those little tiny mistakes should make it impossible to defeat the boss. But that's when the only thing to do is just compete over how quickly or whether or not it's you're at end game. So that's the only thing left to do. And hopefully if you're not at end game, then there's a little bit more of a story reason. Like I've been saying, if you're thinking about the rewards for what rewards do we get for killing the world boss? And the big reward should be that the winter dragon is causing a perpetual winter and that's messing up your node and what you can do in the game. And you want to end the perpetual winter. So the real reward should be that you can play the way you're supposed to play or live the way you're supposed to live instead of without perpetual winter. So that's the real reward. But for lots of people, the game is more important.
Well, we are at 15 minutes over. So I think we will probably call it a show here and be back next week. I don't think there's any reason for us not to be. Now, we do have a PAX Day show at some point coming up. We'll have to talk with Lethality. I don't know if that'll be next week or the week after. We'll obviously let everyone know in Discord. So Until then, some of us are going to be very busy with Run and Liberty here soon in 2 days. Unfortunately, cannot provide any sort of report back to anyone. So, but until next week, y'all have a great week, and we will see you here next Sunday.
Yeah.
Peace.
Good luck, Unity devs.